Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the 9 p.m. live English news edition. Here are the top stories. The head of state receives experts from the media regulatory institution. And civilian personnel decoration ceremony in the defense. And for the international news, France, Germany, Portugal, and Spain qualify for the last 16. Hello, welcome again. Welcome to our newsroom for having the news in details. The President of the Republic, His Excellency, Mr. Ismail Mergele, has at the advent of our Independence Day used his right to grace and thus granted a measure of remission of sentences to 277 prisoners. The information contained in a presidential decree dated today, Thursday, specifies that the measure of remission of sentence granted by the head of state is 3 months. This is a measure of clemency granted only to convicted prisoners serving their sentences in a prison establishment of the Republic of Djibouti. It should be noted, according to the presidential decree, that the beneficiaries of this measure of remission of sentence does not include prisoners convicted of the crimes of trafficking in human beings, smuggling of migrants, sexual assault and rape, trafficking and use of drugs, and action of terrorism. Remember that the right to pardon is a prerogative that the supreme legal norm, the Constitution grants to the head of state. Another subject, the President of the Republic, His Excellency, Mr. Ismail Mergele, received today at the Presidential Palace the Chairman of the High Independent Authorities of Communication in Tunisia, Mr. Nouri. During the meeting, Mr. Nouri reported to the President on capacity building for media regulation and created a partnership between the Independent High Authority of Communication in Tunisia and the National Commission of Communication of Djibouti to improve the audiovisual landscape and promote a real culture of media regulation, but also face the challenges of globalization and digital appearance. The Ministry of Communication in charge of Post and Telecommunication, Mr. Adwan Abdullahi Bahdoun, and the Chairman of the National Commission of Communication, Mr. Ali Mohammed Dembio, and the Vice President of the National Commission of Communication, Mrs. Suad Hussein, have taken part in the meeting. Now, the President of the Independent High Authority of the Communication in Tunisia, Mr. Nouri, was honored by this meeting and mentioned the reinforcement of the capacities for the regulation of the media and created a partnership between the Independent High Authorities of Communication in Tunisia and the National Communication of the Djibouti Communication. The headquarters of the Directorate of the International Relations hosted today an important ceremony of awarding decoration to authorities and civilian staff from different backgrounds who collaborate in synergy with the Djiboutian Armed Forces in their respective fields. Among the recipients, we note our Djiboutian singers and composers who have particularly distinguished themselves by their patriotic values, the staff of the Ministry of Communication in charge of Post and Telecommunication, the major brands such as the Al Gamil Group and the Al Wasil establishment, and many other personalities. The ceremony colorful was placed under the auspices of the Prime Minister, His Excellency Mr. Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed. Among the members of the government, we note the presence of the Ministry of Defense in charge of the relations with the Parliament, the Ministry of Communication in charge of Post and Telecommunication, the Ministry of Youth and Culture. On his arrival, His Excellency Mr. Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed was welcomed by His Excellency Hassan Omar Mohammed and the General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim. Together, they proceeded to the review of troops composed of a section of the headquarters regiment to pay the honors. This reviewed the military delegation composed of senior officials of the General Staff of the Armed Forces. A total of 15 civilian personalities were rewarded. The distinction included, among others, the Medal of Commander of the National Order of 27th June, the Medal of Officer of the National Order of 27th June, and the Medal of Knife of the National Order of 27th June. All these distinctions are awarded by presidential decree. The military delegation led by the Chief General Staff of the Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, was composed of General Tahir Ali Mohammed, Chief of Defense Staff, and a small delegation of senior officers of the General Staff of the Armed Forces. The number of guests was reduced to a minimum due to the coronavirus pandemic, and the barrier gestures were scrupulously respected. It should be noted that these well-deserved awards were given in recognition of the remarkable work done and the efforts made by everyone in their field. Proud of the services rendered to the nation and satisfied with the individual performance of each one, the Chief of the Defense Staff was particularly keen to thank them through this ceremony. The ceremony began with the reading of some verses of the Holy Quran. The Sheikh Sulaiman Khairi endowed with an excellent voice of melody.
تبارك الذي جعل في السماء بروجا وجعل فيها سراجا وقمرا منيرا وهو الذي جعل في السماء بروجا وهو الذي جعل الليل والنهار خلفة لمن أراد أن يذكر أو أراد شكورا صدق الله العظيم.
At the end of the reading of the Holy Quran, the ceremony of awarding medals to the authorities and civilian personnel, in close collaboration with the Djibouti Armed Forces, could begin. These authorities and civilian personnel of different horizons were distinguished by presidential decree as a reward for the service rendered to the nation, each in their fields. Proud and satisfied with the individual performance of each one, the general was particularly keen to thank them through this ceremony. These decorations were handed over by the Prime Minister, His Excellency Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed, the Minister of Defense in charge of relations with the Parliament, His Excellency Hassan Omar Mohammed, and the Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces, General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه بركة رسولك وقد بقاري
كان قصانا بركة حجالي باير ما يزيد بالشيق ما يزيد وانت كما بقى يزيد بركة رسولك.
During his speech, the Chief General of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, thanked the Prime Minister for having honored with his presence and for having accepted to preside over this highly symbolic ceremony. In his remarks, the General stressed that this decoration symbolizes the recognition of the Republic for your dedication in your services to the nation. This distinction rewards the values of your patriotism, your qualities, and your professional career, which make each of you an example for your colleagues. The decoration ceremony continued with a buffet offered by the military command in a serene atmosphere where the folk group Harbi animated by songs and patriotic dances. The ceremony ended with the traditional family photo. Another national news now. This is the most important national scientific event. Today, the Ministry of Economy and Finance, Mr. Ilyas Musa Dawali, presided at the Center for Entrepreneurship and Leadership, an award ceremony organized in honor of the best laureates selected during the recruitment mission of the first cohort of 20 Djibouti student engineers of statistical works, which were led by Mr. Idrissa Diagne, Director of the National School of Statistics and Economic Analysis, Pierre Ndiaye. This day allowed to value the work of the laureates and their tutor to a large audience of professionals from all different national spheres. The Ministry of Economy, Mr. Ilyas Musa Dawali, in a perspective of proximity with citizens, handed over the gifts, a gesture that has aroused emulation among the winners at the end of this competition. 20 candidates with the highest mark were declared admitted to the competition and 10 on the waiting list by the jury chaired by the General Manager of the Institute of Statistics, Mr. Idris Ali Sultan. Of the 20 candidates admitted, 3 were women. Civil servants represent. Of those admitted, 40%. The laureates are between 21 and 35 years old, with an average age of 25 years. Most of the candidates have bachelor degrees in mathematics. The Ministry of Economy and Finance, Ilyas Musa Dawali, called this initiative that reflects the dynamism of the Institute of Statistics of Djibouti and the leadership of the Ministry of Finance and Economy, a key body that plays a primary role in strengthening the capital of capacities, important component in the strategic direction of this institution. Now, as part of the promotion of women's empowerment, the Center for Social Action and Empowerment of Women organized yesterday a ceremony to hand over certificates and kits to young women of the Association of Jago, located in Section 7 of the town of Bulaus, who benefited from a training in sewing for 8 months. This ceremony was chaired by the Ministry of Women and Family, Mrs. Muna Usman Aden, where present the Ambassador of the Republic of Turkey in Djibouti, Mr. Salim, the Coordinator of TICA, Mr. Irfan, the Technical Advisor of the Minister, Mr. Ahmed Gaba, the Director of the Center of CASAF, Mrs. Nema Yunis, and the President of the Association of Jago, and as well as the beneficiaries of the said training. Ambassador Salim explained that this action is an addition to the many programs implemented by the promotion of the empowerment of Djiboutian women. Now, the Ministry of Women and Family, Mrs. Muna Usman, for her part, said that this ceremony aims to promote women's empowerment and income-generating activities and to be economically autonomous in the future. The local civil aviation Djibouti hosted this morning the signing ceremony of receipt of aircraft for the fight against locusts. Present were the Ministry of Agriculture, Water, Fisheries, Livestock and Fishery Resources, Mr. Mohamed Ahmed Awale, the Ministry of Health, Dr. Ahmed Roble, the General Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. Ibrahim Elmi. This aircraft, which has our disposal, will not only allow us to fight against locusts, also at the same time will relieve the Djiboutian population of any other daily scourge such as flies, mosquitoes and others. The signature of receipt of an aircraft for the fight against locusts was initiated by the 3 high officials, the General Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. Ibrahim Elmi, and the coordinator of the program, Engineer Baragoita Saeed, and the General Manager of Civil Aviation, Mr. Daoud Ali Abdo. As a reminder, Djibouti launched its National Desert Locust Control Plan on August 27, 2020, which includes a set of surveillance mechanisms, control operations, pesticide management, and human resources. The Ministry of Health, Dr. Ahmed Roble Abdullah, recalled that this aircraft is not only to fight against locusts, but any other daily scourge such as mosquitoes. The Ministry of Agriculture, Water, Fisheries and Livestock Fishery Resources, Mr. Mohamed Ahmed Awali, emphasized that Djibouti now has its own anti-locust aircraft. now chaired by Honorable Sharmarke Musa. The Committee on Finance, General Economy and Planning examined the financial accounts for the year 2018 of the Djibouti Printing Company. This sitting saw the participation of the Ministry of Communication in charge of Post and Telecommunication, Mr. Radwan Abdullahi Badan, accompanied by representatives of the social organs of the Djibouti Printing House, including the chairman of the board of directors, the general manager, and the accountant officer of the said public institution. At the end of the discussion on the structural and financial situation of the IND for the year 2018, the Standing Committee in charge of parliamentary control over public funds has transmitted with its favorable opinion this bill to the next public session of the National Assembly. Another national news, as part of the monthly visit conducted for the inspection of the progress of various extensive projects underway in Gubayt, the Ministry of Energy in charge of natural resources, Mr. Yunus Ali Gedi, conducted yesterday, Wednesday, June 23rd, a visit to assess the future wind farm Gubayt, accompanied by the main senior officials of his cabinet, including the General Secretary, the Senior Advisor, the Director of Energy, and the Project Management, but also engineers and technicians, and a team of EDD that the Ministry was transported early in the morning on the site of the Siemens Gamesa camp, where is housed the staff of the manufacturer of the wind farm Gubayt. The project manager of the Red Sea Power, Mr. Ozario, and his team made a point of announcing that 660 megawatt wind farm is to date 65% built. He recalled that the very stage of construction before making a brief presentation of the progress of this site, whose commissioning is scheduled for January 2021. He also said that 95% of the equipment is in Djibouti, 45% of which has already been moved to the site of Gubayt, where we are today. After this exchange, the delegation went to the site to see the progress of the site. The minister was able to get inside the mast. The different parts of a wind turbine have now no more secret for the minister. Indeed, it should be known that a wind turbine is composed of four main elements: a mast that allows to place the rotor in the nacelle at a sufficient height so that the effect of the drive can occur while supporting their weight, a transformer station that injects the electricity produced into the national electrical grid, and the social responsibility of the project was agreed in the Ministry and the RSP partnership to provide the needs of the local population. And this following the grievances collected by the President of the Republic, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Margele, on the occasion of the last presidential tour in the region of Lakasal, the local population expressed their need for drinking water. Currently, 66,000 liters of drinking water are provided daily with tankers in response to their grievances, and concretizing the instruction of the head of state while promoting renewable energy. A permanent solution has been taken with the installation of a seawater desalination unit running on photovoltaic solar energy, and thus the local population will be supplied with drinking water continuously. The Ministry of Energy in charge of natural resources, Mr. Yunus Ali Gedi, said that on the occasion of the last presidential tour in the region of Lakasal, local people have expressed their need for drinking water. 66,000 liters of drinking water are provided daily with tankers, and soon an installation of a desalination unit of seawater running on photovoltaic solar energy will be developed, and thus the local people will be supplied with drinking water continuously. The new Minister of Commerce and Tourism, Mr. Mohamed Warsam Dirie, accompanied by a delegation of his ministry, was received at the Chamber of Commerce on Monday, June 21st, 2021, for the first official visit in the premises of the institution. This meeting was an opportunity for the Ministry of Commerce and Tourism to get to know the Chamber of Commerce better and to meet the elected representative of the private sector. The General Secretary of the CCD, Mrs. Hiba Usman, presented the institution by recalling its multisectoral character before outlining its prerogative missions and areas of intervention based on the action and project of the new mandate of 2019-2024. In his welcome address, the President of the CCD, Mr. Yusuf Musa Dawali, presented the Djiboutian commercial place and the role of the private sector in the economic development of the country. In addition to the Ministry of Commerce, he praised the effort of the Chamber of Commerce and the role of the government to promote the development of the private sector. He recalled the importance of entrepreneurship and youth training in the prerogative of Chamber of Commerce and pledged to work hand in hand with the CCD to contribute to economic development and regional integration of the country. Mr. Mohamed Warsam Al-Deri finally praised the constant and fruitful collaboration between the ministry he heads and the Chamber of Commerce. He also recalled the support given to the private sector to face the difficulties encountered due the global health crisis. Now, the Union of French-Speaking Press organized yesterday at the Sheraton Hotel the award ceremony of the press in the presence of the advisor to the Ministry of Communication in charge of Post and Telecommunication, Mrs. Aisha Mohamed Roble. The Embassy of People's Republic of China in Djibouti, Mr. Shen Shah, and the President of the UPF Djibouti, Mr. Kandid Ibrahim, and many professionals of the print, audio, visual media were present. In close collaboration with the Chinese Embassy in Djibouti, this day began with the presentation of mini report on the centenary of the Chinese Communist Party in projection, followed by the presentation of gifts. This fifth edition of the Press Award saw the consecration of several winners of the print, audiovisual, and online media who distinguished themselves by the quality of their reporting and production. This first prize was won by Mrs. Mariam Boha. For the press prize, she submitted a debate program focusing on the role of Jewish women in the long struggle that led to the accession of our country to national sovereignty. The second prize went to Hassan Mohammed Ahmed, a reporter at the Djibouti Information Agency, who submitted an article reporting on the celebration of the 124th anniversary of the Battle of Adwa in Ethiopia on March 2nd, 2020, in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. The third prize went to Zubair Hassan, a journalist with the daily newspaper La Nation. In a well-documented article published on the occasion of the Week of Entrepreneurship, Zubair Hassan reported on this event, which include debates, testimonies, and workshops led by experts on various topics that have sparked creativity and entrepreneurial desire. The winners of this fifth edition of the Press Award received various awards, such as laptop, tablets, smartphones, and airline tickets to visit countries in the region. Moving into international news, it was the revenge of the last Euro final. The Portugal-France clash of this Wednesday evening in Budapest ended in a draw 2-2. Cristiano Ronaldo scored twice from the penalty spot on the French side. Karim Benzema scored twice with a penalty just before halftime before scoring a pure goal in the second half. Germany, on the other hand, failed to win against Hungary in Munich and had to settle for a draw 2-2, but it is enough to qualify for the round of 16. The beginning of the match was marked by the appearance during the Hungarian anthem of an activist who waved a rainbow flag as a sign of support for the LGBT community and to denounce the Hungarian law deemed discriminatory against them. With this draw, Germany joins France, already qualified for the round of 16 and finishing at the top of Group F. Portugal came in third and also qualified. On the other hand, Hungary is eliminated. This is it for this edition of 9 p.m. Thank you for watching us and have a wonderful evening.